Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Mike Strauss. I'm the General Counsel of the EBRD. Before we begin this panel, which I know you're all waiting for, and with the indulgence of our wonderful panelists sitting here, we're privileged today to have the opportunity to put our money where our mouth is on this panel. Today, we're briefly joined by Stefan Wenzel, German Parliamentary State Secretary, and of course, EBRD's own President, Odile Renaud-Bassou, to sign an agreement of cooperation between the EBRD and the German Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action. This agreement relates to the climate syndication platform, and through that mechanism will substantially support bringing in private co-investment alongside EBRD's climate projects, something we'll be talking about a lot in the abstract during this panel. So without anything further, given the short time we have, let me welcome Odile and Stefan to please come up, prepare for to speak, and then to sign. Other way around, to sign, then speak?
Whatever you want. Sign and speak, I think.
Maybe sign and speak.
Sign and speak. So first, we sign.
First we sign, then we speak.
And the cover today is blue when you look at it.
Odile is saying if you didn't get the light blue memo, then you missed the opportunity.
Blue like oh. This one, because we have three signatories. Three? Yeah, three. Yeah, but one has two. One has two and one.
You wanted to confuse you. So it's legal start.
Pleasure. Thank you so much. Yes, if you will. No, so I'm really very delighted to be here to sign this cooperation agreement of the climate syndication platform between the EBRD and the German Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action. We are really grateful to Germany, one of our main donors in EBRD, for the continued support and strong commitment to climate action. We have a long-standing partnership with Germany. Amongst others, Germany is providing us with critical funding to support Ukraine and to enable Egypt's energy transition via the Nexus for Water, Food and Energy, so-called NWAFI. And we are very pleased to see today growing level of cooperation between EBRD and IKI over the past years. The climate syndication platform is now the latest example of our partnership. And this platform is, I believe, a direct response to the challenge and common goal of EBRD and Germany to scale up climate finance investments by mobilizing private institutional investors in Eastern Europe, the Caucasus, Turkey, the Southern and Eastern Mediterranean, and Central Asia. This partnership is efficient and sets the right example. It's efficient because Germany's 30 million euros in guarantees and technical assistance is expected to leverage up to 225 million of climate co-financing from institutional investors over the next 8 years. And it set an example because it's a unique funding solution that allows us to use Germany's resources to mobilize private co-finance while the EBRD retains the original project risk-reward balance. This means that the platform will support climate mitigation and adaptation projects that may have been supported directly by the EBRD, but would not have benefited from private sector participation. It therefore allows Germany's funding to support private co-financing for well-structured and profitable transactions at the limit of what the market can accept today. So we're really pushing the boundaries so that in the future they will be motivated to invest without the need of any support. So we are really getting them into an area where they would not come themselves spontaneously. This partnership is evidence of our joint commitment to unlocking private investment for climate solutions through the use of innovating risk-sharing tools. So we very much look forward to continue building this very strong partnership with BMWK in the critical fight against climate change. Thank you once again, and looking forward implementation. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Renaud-Basso, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies. It's a pleasure for me to be with you for this event, and it's an honor that I have the possibility to sign with you this document. And I think it's a beginning of a new cooperation in this field of financing, and I'm looking forward to the efforts. The global stocktake at this COP28 in Dubai will show us that we are currently still far from limiting global warming to 1.5%, and enhancing adaptation to climate change is on the agenda very high. But we have a lot of solutions yet. We had a lot of technologies we can use. And we have a lot of things we've done in the last years since the Paris Agreement was signed, a masterpiece of the French presidency in Paris, and has bring us all together with all countries all over the world. 196 countries signed this Paris Agreement. And one important part of this Paris Agreement is also all that what is necessary to finance the investments we need. In order to keep 1.5 within reach, we must all ramp up our mitigation ambition and make finance flows consistent with the agreement goals, with the Paris Agreement goals. This includes making significant progress in ending finance for carbon-intensive activities and activities that are not aligned with the Paris Agreement, also in budgets of private companies. We also have to mobilize both public and private finance for climate action. Increasing financing for climate action is one of the key challenges to ensure that we can meet the Paris Agreement goals. One key element of this is and remains public finance. As Germany, we are a trustworthy partner in climate finance and have continued to increase our climate finance in last years. The commitment by our Chancellor to provide at least 6 billion euros of international climate finance from budgetary sources by 2025 was already fulfilled for the first time in 2022. We will make every effort to maintain this level. There's great potential for climate protection in developing and emerging countries, and we should continue to support them. We stand by the collective commitment to provide $100 billion in climate finance and believe that this target will be met in 2023. At the same time, public finance alone will never be sufficient. Private finance will need to play a significant role. In the past, the mobilization of private finance, especially as part of the $100 billion target, has lagged behind. I'm hence very pleased to announce today the cooperation between the EBRD and the German Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action on the establishment of the Climate Syndication Platform. As a part of the International Climate Initiative, ICI, I'm glad that we have today signed the agreement and announced that we will provide 30 million euro for this cooperation. The Climate Syndication Platform is a good example for how a cooperation between public finance and private finance can work. Here, private investment is leveraged by the EBRD's money, and we provide first loss cover. On de-risking the investments, these investments will directly go to climate change mitigation activities. We are looking forward to supporting the great potential for climate protection in our partner countries from the EBRD family. We will promote the transformation of the economies to more climate-friendly ones. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for attending this event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wetzel, and thank you very much, Odile. We really appreciate it. One more round of applause. Let me now invite our panelists to come up to the stage.
Just need a minute, sorry.
I think you can still come all the way. I think we are right on time, which is good because we only have a full hour, and we've the first 15 minutes have been really, really fantastic for EBRD, for Germany, and for the subject we're discussing. But let me welcome you all, welcome our panelists and guests, and thank you for your patience. On behalf of the EBRD, I'm delighted to welcome you all to our panel, Creating Pathways for Mobilizing Climate Finance in Emerging Markets. I won't presume everyone here knows who we are, EBRD. We're a private sector-focused multilateral development bank, originally established in 1991 to drive progress towards market-oriented economies in the former Soviet Union and Eastern Europe. Since the time of our founding, we've expanded our geographic scope, and we've also been committed to development that is environmentally sound and sustainable. And this commitment is particularly relevant in our regions. Many of the economies where we currently operate are highly vulnerable to impacts of climate change. And at the same time, our regions are among the most carbon-intensive in the world. This strong reliance on carbon-intensive energy sources can lead to unsupportive regulatory frameworks and varying levels of political commitment for green transition. Without the proper enabling environment, financial innovation and the flow of capital towards green investment can falter. At the same time, while public finance is surely necessary, it is far from sufficient to meet the Paris Agreement climate goals. To mobilize the trillions of investment we all know is required, strong participation of the private sector is absolutely essential. As part of our missions, the EBRD and other multilateral development banks work with a wide range of stakeholders to leverage capital and steer financial flows towards low carbon and climate resilient activities in emerging markets. For example, we support our government clients in their regulatory reform efforts. We design innovative financial products with co-investors. We provide climate finance, and we offer technical assistance to private sector clients to make them more climate resilient, and unlock green finance. This mission is natural to us in many ways, as we MDBs are used to working in challenging economies to bring about systemic and long-lasting change. There are two key areas we recognize as important. The first is mobilization of private capital. We seek persistently to identify what holds back investors from sustainable investment and use our skills, our knowledge, and our funding to break down those barriers. Second, we aid in systemic reform of the economic systems where we operate, supporting the enabling environment that channels not just finance, but entrepreneurial, technical, and managerial resources to address sustainability challenges. The EBRD's own 2022 climate finance for low and middle income countries has risen to $4.3 billion from $3.9 billion in 2019. And in total, EBRD's climate finance for 2022 increased by 35% from 2019 numbers, up to a full total number of $6.8 billion in 2022. Beyond our climate finance contributions, we carefully scrutinize how much money we mobilize in parallel from the private sector. EBRD's total climate private mobilization stood at $10 billion in 2022. We're also already fulfilling a pledge to make at least half of our investments green by 2025. And as of the 1st of January 2023, and this is very important, though I'm sure you've heard it before, EBRD has fully aligned its activities with the mitigation and adaptation goals of the Paris Agreement. As part of our Paris alignment, we engage with our partner financial institutions to help them green their portfolios and mainstream climate risk and climate governance. To support our clients during this transformation, the bank has set up a dedicated advisory donor-funded facility to offer technical assistance, the Corporate Climate Governance Facility. The EBRD combines this support also with policy dialogue focused on systemic reforms through the development of favorable regulatory environments and policy landscapes that create resilient market structures and an enabling environment to mobilize private sector climate finance at scale. Turning to our panelists, Soha El-Turki, who is EBRD's Vice President and Chief Financial Officer, will tell us more about EBRD's work on mobilizing private sector climate finance. Soha leads the EBRD's finance functions, including debt mobilization, operations and service management, strategy, planning and control, and treasury. Before I turn to you, Soha, let me quickly introduce our other distinguished panelists. I'm pleased to be joined by Joaquin Hugo, who heads Global Sovereign Solutions for the Public Sector Group at Citigroup. The Public Sector Group focuses on debt advisory, digitalization, and ESG solutions for public sector entities globally. Joaquin has more than 30 years of experience at Citigroup and 35 years of experience in the financial industry. Welcome, Joaquin, and look forward to hearing more about the commercial banks and private investor perspective from you. We also have Dr. Barbara Buchner, Global Managing Director of Climate Policy of the Climate Policy Initiative. For those of you who do not know CPI, it is an analysis and advisory organization with deep expertise in finance and policy. Their mission is to help governments, businesses, and financial institutions drive economic growth while addressing climate change. We're delighted to have you joining the panel, Barbara. Next, we have Jingdong Hua, the Vice Chair of the International Sustainability Standards Board, which is part of the International Financial Reporting Standards Foundation. Jingdong oversees the development and implementation of the ISSB's strategies to support and include stakeholders in emerging and developing economies. He's also a former Vice President and Treasurer of the World Bank. Welcome, very warm welcome to you, Jingdong. And last, by no means least, we have Dr. Vera Rodenhoff, Deputy Director General for International Cooperation and International Energy Transition of the German Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action. Her responsibilities include managing G7, G20, IEA, IRENA, the Climate Club, I could go on, and many other multi-partner initiatives, aligning financial flows with the Paris Agreement, and the International Climate Initiative, which was funded over 900 projects worth 6 billion euros since 2008. Vera, we're so glad that you've joined us today to share what International Climate Initiative is doing to stimulate private sector climate finance from a policymaker's perspective. So, let me jump right into the questions because we are right on time. I hope we'll stay that way. It's hard with this many wonderful people to work with, but let me jump to you immediately, Soha. What do you think are the key commercial and legal challenges that must be addressed in emerging markets to bridge the estimated $100 billion in annual climate financing gap. Maybe you could start sharing specifically how EBRD's combination of innovative financial instruments and mobilization products, also including technical assistance and policy dialogue, address those key challenges.
Let me just check. Hello? Yeah, thanks a lot, Mike, and good morning, everyone. Look, mobilization is at the core of the EBRD mandate, and it's been something we've been working on for a very long time. We continue trying to crowd in different types of investors and innovating and introducing new types of products. We've so far been able to forge very good relationships with some key investor groups, traditionally through commercial banks, through impact investors, more recently, in recent years, through insurers. And those who have been able to bring them into our transactions, our markets. We've had more challenges with institutional investors, pension funds, because of some of the challenges that you were asking about, Mike, namely the risk perceptions in our markets, familiarity with the market, the returns in our markets, and comparison to the perceived risk and regulatory challenges. So these are all things that have, that are taken into consideration when we talk to our investors, and we try to resolve some of these issues to bring them on board, because we genuinely believe that we can offer very impactful investments for them with long tenors and a continuous stream of income. Now, we try to do that through a number of channels. First, I'll talk a bit about our products. Now, obviously, traditionally, we mobilize through with co-financing partners, through traditional AB loan structures, which is a form of syndications. But in more recent years, there's been a lot more diversity in terms of the types of products we offer. We have a very important program, which is called the Unfunded Risk Participation Program, in which we bring on insurers into our markets and transactions. That program, we've so far deployed like 3 billion of mobilization through this program. We add anywhere between €500 million and 750 million euros every year to this program. It has allowed insurers to come into our high impact transactions, but it has also allowed us to mobilize a wider range of structures, including some local currency, which is usually quite difficult with others. We're expanding this program further. We're offering a new pilot that will allow a larger or broader range of investors to come in. We're also looking at other tools. For example, we're considering portfolio mobilization, maybe some form of securitization, which is at the early stages of development. And a couple of other initiatives that we look to are under the category of blended finance. Now, while we're very careful with blended finance when it comes to mobilizing the private sector into our markets, because we do not want to distort the markets, and we want the investors to develop a real understanding of the market. However, in certain structures, in certain industries, it is necessary to bring on new investors. And we have a lot of relationships with donors and experience with blending, which allows us to do this. Let me just bring on two quick examples. We have through EFSD Plus, which is a first loss guarantee program under the European Commission. We're able to now allocate a portion of these guarantees to our co-financing partners to be able to provide first loss and kind of de-risk part of their exposures. And of course, the initiative that we were here today to sign, EKI, which is also allows us to leverage donor money and partnerships with the public entities to bring in further mobilization into the climate finance space, and thank the German government again for the support on this matter. Now, this is on the product side, and we continue looking to find new products to bring in new types of investors. But having products alone is not the key to bring in private investors at scale. We genuinely believe at the EBRD that we need to, on the ground, to change or to allow the regulatory environment and the political commitment to evolve when it comes to developing the market in order to attract private investors. So we do a lot of work with governments and regulators to develop policies that will create the regulatory and the market environment which provides the right signals to investors. We have dedicated teams that work on multiple policy initiatives. You know, they also include regulatory frameworks, PPP system functioning, and renewable energy auction systems. And I think Mike referred also to an example. There are many examples, but an example of the technical assistance which happens through the Climate Governance Client Advisory Facility, which supports financial and non-financial companies to develop their climate-related governance, which will eventually allow them to access the, the capital markets through climate-related fundraising. These efforts in total have allowed us to grow our mobilization year on year, and in 2022, despite the challenges that we have in our countries of operation, the macroeconomic war, etc., we've been able to mobilize a total of around 15 billion euros between direct and indirect mobilization, and 70% of that was for climate. I'll stop here.
Thank you so much, Soha. I'm going to use this microphone over here. And I want to turn to you, Vera. You have spent 25 years in your career working in climate issues, mostly with the German government. I'd like to know a little bit more from you, from your experience, what it's like leading a team for international cooperation for the environment, energy, and cities from the German government perspective. What are the challenges you can share as a policymaker?
Okay. Indeed, I did spend not all of my time working on the city specifically, but a small portion, and now I focus mainly on climate and energy. But over the time, of course, what the focus has changed. In the beginning, it was about convincing the public and some countries and also the business sector and finance that climate change is real, that it's happening. Then it was about, addressing, agreeing on targets and goals and what the different countries and all the different stakeholders need to do. And now we have the Paris Agreement. We have countries know they have to do their national determined contributions. The science is becoming ever clearer, and the crisis is unfortunately becoming ever more urgent. And I think we have some pretty good, we found good ways to support countries also in addressing through policy and regulatory approaches how they can actually come up with the national plans and energy plans that they need, and this is one of the focuses also of the ICI, where we address regulatory frameworks. And now what we see more and more is that we have to mobilize the investments. And so also for us, this is one of our key priority is mobilizing private finance, also aligning the financial flows with Paris. It's one of our key priorities, not just moving away from subsidies, but taking them away from fossil fuels and putting them into renewables and efficiency. At least for the German government, this is the conviction, this is the way we need to go. So that is what has changed. And this is what has brought us here specifically. And we've worked with EBRD also on combinations of capacity building and mobilizing private finance. And to mobilize the finance, we work on the regulatory frameworks. We also work on the project pipeline. We have for example, also on cities, then created a fund that works on that is the City Climate Finance Fund, which is one part of an initiative that we funded at the UN Secretary General's Climate Summit in 2019 that does exactly that. It's called Lucy. The fund, the Pre-Feasibility Project Preparation Fund for cities is the first bit of that. It helps create projects, and then the whole initiatives helps bring these projects to development banks, international ones and also national ones. So we really have seen a shift in what we need to do, and now we are looking at ever more innovative and targeted instruments to address the risks, because the private finance is not moving either to enough at scale, quickly enough to the global south. It's not moving to also adaptation as a topic. It's mainly focused on mitigation. So this is exactly what we're doing here. We're addressing the barriers, the risk of financing in certain countries and also on certain topics, because we know without taking the risk away, we won't get private finance to where it needs to go. And without private finance, we will not be able to address the challenge we're facing to stay below, well below 2 and certainly below 1.5.
Thank you so much for, and actually this is, it's almost as if you set it up perfectly for me to turn to Joaquin. Because Joaquin, I think we all know that, and as Vera has said, that public finance and MDB finance will not be enough to address, not even remotely enough to address the climate crisis from a financing perspective. So institutions like Citibank are precisely where we turn to next to wonder what can the private sector do, what can financiers do, and what can private sector clients do to address that gap.
Yeah, so look, I mean, touching a little bit on the complications, if you will, there's a significant regulatory headwind that we face, right? And it comes from two sides, right? When you look at Basel III rules for us to put long-term assets in the books of the banks, you get significantly punishing loss norms, right? The longer you go in terms of tenor. And then the other thing you get is a big requirement for liquidity. Because as a regulator, obviously you want the banks to have liquidity when they face a crisis. So the more you put long-term assets, the more you're punished on having significant amounts of liquidity in the short term. That translates into very, very high cost of capital. So what we are doing in terms of, let me just say one more thing before I go to potential solutions. The other thing is that when we talk to our regulators and our shareholders and stakeholders in general, there is a significant fear of when you go away from investment grade land into lower rated credits, which is replicated at the insurance level, it's replicated, at the pension fund level. So it's not only us, the commercial banks. So what happens is that we have some internal ratios that say, only an X percentage of your balance sheet will go to high yield. When you look at GFANZ, right, the Global Financial Alliances for Net Zero, which is, again, pensions, insurance, and banks, it's $133 trillion asset managed. When you look at how much of that is in emerging markets, it's 13 to 15%, and then that's already deployed. So what happens is that you basically count on a few trillion in terms of what rotates every year. So when you look at the proportions, you end up with not a lot, right? So how do we change this architecture, right? And it's really interesting because when you look at the products that you guys in EBRD have come up with, the first losses and how you actually slice the different risks, that's what we need. We just need it bigger, right? A lot of the other MDBs are struggling with the concept of first loss with certain things, but kind of like the design of the solutions is there, if you will, to try to de-risk. On the other hand, you cannot de-risk everything because, again, that would be just making all public money. I think we're also, aside from advocating to different parties, right? Because advocating in front of your regulator sounds a little bit self-serving. So it's something that actually we're asking other parties to take on for the industry, and it's happening, but it's not easy. And American banks have a set of regulations, interpretation, European banks different, Japanese banks different. It's the same regulation, but same different way. The regulator looks at it. So it's one other thing. And before I finish, this morning we had a panel where we Citi announced a very, very large report, 100 and odd pages, on project preparation. Because project preparation, which again you're addressing in the signing today in different things, this is the key. I mean, if you read this report, which I think it's worth doing, there's 1,500 different facilities globally where you can get technical assistance that are not coordinated, obviously, because they're dependent on every donor. So very, very difficult for people to navigate. So there's call it a random process that happens in terms of what gets technical assistance and what's the real prioritization. So think when you're boiling water, right, that at the beginning it's a few bubbles. That's what we have, right? So hopefully, eventually it will boil over and we'll get kind of like that tipping point for significant more private sector. But it is quite an uphill battle and tough, right? I mean, I think we're all here at COP hearing the same message, private sector, and we just have like green shoots of how to do that, but still a lot to go.
Joaquin, thanks. This is the first time I've heard the metaphor of boiling being a positive for what we're doing. But I completely agree with you on that point. And really, Barbara, this is precisely what you do. So once again, it's been very well set up for the next speaker. I'd love to hear how you see these challenges that Joaquin has just posed.
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me, and a very, very interesting discussion already. I'm not only boiling water, so I'm doing other things as well, but just to say, I think the panelists already have addressed, I think highlighted, including you actually, several of the key issues that at the moment keep private investments flowing into emerging economies. Again, our figures, we do a lot of providing information and data to show basically where the financing gaps are and where money is going. And we still see that there is private capital is not going to emerging economies, and that is because the cost of capital are so high. We've done some work where we've shown that actually the cost of capital about 7 times higher in emerging economies than in developed countries. So obviously there are issues, and I think all the different pieces here that we've heard from project preparation facilities, obviously policies which always lead the way and are really providing the enabling environment to risk sharing instrument, I think are extremely important. And I want to call them risk sharing instrument or risk management instruments, because I don't think we need to de-risk everything. I think, we need to price risks as well. So it's not only about making sure that, we take off all the risks. I'm not, again, not the one who provides the money, Vera, that's you. But I think we really need to be very careful on how we allocate the different types of risks to the right actors. And really, it is blended finance in the end, and you know that better, has happened for a long time. I think it's more a kind of a fashionable world now. I think this is something that has happened for a long time, where we really try to use public finance most effectively to unlock private capital and manage risks that the private sector is not yet ready to take. And what we do in that context, I actually want to flag 2 quick initiatives. One is actually just because we were talking about the bubbling, the project preparation facilities, and you're so right that there are so many out there. I think we still need more of them, and we need to be more effective. But in the context of one of the projects that we are now managing, which actually Germany has launched, the Cities Climate Finance Leadership Alliance, what we're doing is that we're providing kind of a compass, a directory of all the project preparation facilities for urban and subnational finance. In this way, really help direct, the cities, municipalities on where they should go depending on their needs and their kind of situation. So I think you're right. We need to be much better on how we bring together the different initiatives and help really orientate the ones who are looking for access to finance where they can go. So I think there's much more we need to do also beyond the urban thing. And the second initiative I wanted to mention is a lab and incubator that we are running for early stage. So I think there is a lot that's happening already, obviously in renewable energy mitigation, a lot. But I think what we still need is just to think about more innovative ways of channeling financing to the harder sectors, to the harder geographies where not a lot of money is going yet. And so we are running now since almost 10 years something that's called the Global Innovation Lab for Climate Finance, where we are bringing together public and private investors. Again, it is, one of the founders is Germany, together with a few other countries. And I think the important part there is we really try to help entrepreneurs that have ideas and kind of blueprints on how they can unlock private capital. We help them develop their ideas with the input of a lot of investors from public and private sectors. So it's kind of a public-private partnership. The members of that lab are identifying the most, let's say, promising solutions from a call of ideas. So it's a submissions and RFP where we are calling for ideas. And then the ones who kind of win that competition get specific technical support from our teams, but also input from all the investors in kind of very targeted way. And I think just in a nutshell what we've managed to do, and again it's a smaller initiative, but we have managed to develop, help entrepreneurs develop more than 70 instruments, financial structures, from insurance products to project preparation facilities to bonds to guarantee facilities, and they have gone on to unlock more than $4 billion US dollars. It's a new figure. We just launched that yesterday, actually. $4 billion of financial flows, actually, in emerging economies, in the harder sector. So we've really focused on nature-based solutions, industries, cities, really trying to come up with blueprints and hopefully then can be replicated. And I think this is the last point I want to make. I think we have done a lot to come up with really good ideas and instruments that can really unlock capital, but I think what needs to happen now is really how can we use the collective expertise here to go from these pilots to scale. So what does it take actually to get to scale there? Thank you.
Indeed, thank you very much, Barbara. And in fact, there are other initiatives we want to talk about with somebody who is last in order, but certainly not least. Jingdong, this year the ISSB released its very much awaited global baseline for sustainability disclosures. I'd really like to hear your thoughts about first how ISSB views its role in addressing the challenges we discussed, but also what do you think the market's readiness is for adopting the IFRS sustainability standards, and what kind of technical assistance or support, capacity building are you providing towards that end?
Well, thank you very much for your invitation. Let me congratulate EBRD, Soha, Christian, and the team for the agreement with support from German government to upscale syndication. The former treasurer of IFC, where I also led that syndication platform. This is so important in crowding in private sector, while the public sector is viewed as having skin in the game to go there together. So great job. So in my new role as vice chair at the International Sustainability Stamp Board, what piece of the puzzle we are solving for in terms of unlocking investment in transition financing, especially for developing country? I go back to the slogan we use at IFRS Foundation, which now hosts two standard boards. We had the International Accounting Standard Board, which for the past 25 years have been converging, accounting standard into a single international accounting standard. Now over 140 countries uses to simplify decision useful information. And now, of course, our standard board on sustainability created at COP26. The slogan is better information for better decision for investors. Well, the problem is in emerging market, frontier market, we don't have to talk about better information. There is no information. Therefore, investors cannot make a decision, right? The $400 trillion global savings cannot go to emerging market. As a matter of fact, when I was in IFC, visiting many private enterprises in client countries overlap with EBRD, many of them have excellent balance sheets and they do well, but they're not reporting under international standard. And of course, there was no sustainability standard to speak of that is mandatory, globally accepted. So I think we are solving a data decision useful information problem, which is critical to unlock that that information. That said, over the past 30 years, as we all know, a lot of voluntary ESG reporting requirements have been mushrooming, including in our community, the green bond principle that we help to shape. Each of these voluntary standards means really well, but cumulatively has created a very confusing alphabetic soup of different requirements. So much so, a global company like Citi, because they operate over 100 countries, right? They probably have to report under several hundred different ESG requirements. The sooner we can converge to a single language, right, the sooner we will be able to give investors that decision useful data points for them to invest. So just very simply, that we were formed at Glasgow with the strong support of G20, G7, the multilateral bank community, including EBRD, Financial Stability Board. And this June, we launched our first two standard. S1 is called General Requirement. It sets out the principle, the methodology. If we talk about language, the grammar, the vocabulary, right, of how you should report decision useful sustainability material risk and opportunity for investors to use. That's what we call S1. S2 is climate. We require companies to disclose climate sustainability risk and opportunity, including scope 1, 2, and 3 emission. A company needs to reveal your transition risk and physical risk, benchmarking towards nationally determined commitment. Many of them end up, align with Paris Agreement. We require a company to do scenario analysis, come up with resilience assessment, right? All of these data points will be critical for investor to say, especially for emerging market countries, okay, now I have the data, I can look at a company, and I can make a decision to invest. And one could say, okay, what if a listed company in a developing country is actually high carbon emission? What happens is that if you are high in carbon emission, that means your valuation is sort of on the low side. An investor will say, I want to come in, help accelerate that carbon transition to net zero, to carbon neutral, and therefore, you can attract investment into emerging market. Not to mention the fact that in developing countries, given the risk premium is so much higher, but a big part of it is perceived risk rather than actual risk, right? Every data point that we can generate is very positive in terms of contributing. Last thing I wanted to say, and this is where the partnership with EBRD, MDB is important. That is, for the Global South, we need to do the extra work of supporting capacity building. So Global South companies, national regulators feel they are equipped with the knowledge, with the readiness to implement ISSB's mandatory standard in the same speed as Global North. At COP28, we launch our Knowledge Hub, which has curated information from third party, over 100 different items. We're creating e-learning, but we are a small standard maker in terms of delivery, those capacity building. We're counting on partners like EBRD to do this together. Not to mention, very, very grateful that EBRD already reports under TCFD, which, as you know, now has been folded into ISSB, and we will take on the baton of monitoring TCFD. That is to say, if you're already doing TCFD compliant report, you're halfway there in terms of ISSB compliant, or better yet, if you do ISSB, you're fully compliant with TCFD. I'm grateful that EBRD has already indicated your roadmap towards voluntary ISSB compliance to be a role model for your client countries. Thank you.
No pressure at all, Jingdong. No pressure at all on the EBRD. So, first of all, thank you very much to Barbara. I know she had to run to another panel. Given the time we have, I was originally going to ask each of you a different question, but now I think we'll do a lightning round where instead we only have about, by my estimation, 7 or 8 minutes. So we've talked a lot about challenges, and I think that's a very healthy way to look, but I also want to look at opportunities. And so I'm wondering, and we'll start with you, Soha, if you don't mind, what opportunities do you see for expanding climate finance, particularly mobilized from the private sector in emerging economies?
Sure, Mike, I'll run through them quickly. Look, I think we need, number one, investor education. We need to continue work closely with our investors to make sure that they understand our markets better, they understand the actual risk of the MDB asset class, and that we kind of do as much hand-holding as we can in order to bring them into our transactions. This also brings me an important related point, which is data. The problem with a lot of the risk analysis that is required for our country, our kinds of countries, is that there isn't enough data, also as Jingdong was just saying, to help the investors understand the real risk behind our asset class. For that, there is a concerted effort by MDBs to share the MDB loans or MDB exposures related data in a way that would help investors better understand the risk-return trade-offs, because normally our asset class performs a lot better than implied by the rating of the countries. Another key thing, and it's something we repeatedly talk about, and I mentioned it earlier, is the working on the fundamentals through policy dialogue. Because we do not believe that the private investments will come at scale until there is a well-established regulatory framework. So it's not about, it has to work hand in hand, or maybe even, you need to kind of kickstart the regulatory work, the political commitment, the right market signals while you work on the products. That is the only way you will actually pave the way for significant inflows later on, where it would lead to a situation where we would not be needed, because the market would have evolved in a certain direction. So we do a lot of that work at a strategic level, and it works best when we combine policy with investments, with technical assistance, working closely with the governments, investors, etc. We've done it repeatedly through multiple kinds of initiatives. Finally, another important thing that we focus on at the EBRD is the development of local currency lending and trying to mobilize also some investors into that type of lending. We're one of the MDBs that are quite focused on this. We do it again through a lot of policy dialogue and reform and technical assistance and capacity building. And we also operate in the markets ourselves. We try to build the right environment to enable local currency lending. And through mobilization, we bring in some investors, insurance companies, through unfunded types of mobilization, but there is more work to be done to find ways to mobilize directly local currency.
Thanks so much, Soha. And Joaquin, I'm going to turn to you. You already mentioned that first loss risk guarantees are one way that if we could scale it up, you would be willing participants. Are there any other opportunities out there we're missing?
Well, absolutely. So, I talked a little bit about the kind of like problems we have with balance sheet assets, on balance sheet assets. We are excellent at actually capital markets. So we know investors and we know how to do bonds, probably better than anybody else, right? So the secret sauce, I think, in the end, is how we can get this to the institutional investors. And some of the things that were said here, the lack of data and the perceived risk that's actually bigger than the real risk are essential, right, in putting this story together. I'm actually working on transactions where you can get a collection of single B average credits, and with the right first loss, get 80% of AAA securities on top of that portfolio. So this is what we need, is the ability to put together these assets and actually get to those insurance companies and those pension funds in the developed world that need to buy the very highly rated paper, because from the regulatory point of view, they cannot go to high yield. So there is magic, absolutely. The balance sheet of a development bank itself it's alchemy, right? So it's how do we replicate that into, with the least of the first loss and the least of the preferred creditor status being transferred, so we can do big.
Thank you much. Thank you very much, Joaquin. It's like the old comment about technology. It's if it's a really good technology, it's indistinguishable from magic, and that's how we feel the MDB balance sheets can be seen sometimes. We're going to have to wrap up, so I'm going to leave a last opportunity for either Jingdong or Vera or both of you to have a final word on that second topic, if you have it. I see Jingdong is.
So continue with the opportunity. Adopting ISSB standard is not just a tick in the box or compliance. It is a systemic way for company to identify, manage, and mitigate or embrace sustainability risk and opportunity to improve corporate performance. Because this is a very methodical way from governance, management, identify risk and opportunity, and setting up a target matrix so that you can achieve them. If a company does that and then systemically reveals those data, I'm sure investment will come.
Yeah, I see the opportunity for MDBs together with the whole finance sectors, project preparation facilities to all work together, collaborate along the whole value chain, also streamline processes, and opportunity for us, and we're here at this COP to do exactly that, to send the right signal. One thing we're doing on that is we want to not only pledge that we're tripling renewables and doubling energy efficiency capacity, but we also want to have a COP decision on that, and that would send the right signal also to investors and chip away a little bit, hopefully, at the perceived risk. Thanks.
Fantastic. And you've been a fantastic panel, particularly for remaining on time. With this, let me just bring the session to a close and thanks all our fantastic panelists. You've really given us a lot of food for thought. I'll leave you with two key messages. First, it's essential to establish the enabling national policies and regulatory environments that will unlock green investments and develop building blocks for climate finance solutions. Second, and this is more for people in my world at EBRD, it's imperative that we in the MDBs continue to work closely with our partners, private investors, commercial banks, standard setters, and public authorities to overcome the regulatory and commercial barriers to mobilize private sector climate finance at scale. Thank you very much for joining us, and please a round of applause for the